Greetings, nerds. This is Scene and Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How you doing this Thursday evening?
I'm doing all right. I'm
That's good.
here.
Yeah, I'm here as well. Looking forward to talking some Daredevil Born Again penultimate episode with you tonight.
Yep. We will be talking about that.
Yeah.
But first, we have to go through some of these headlines, which include that The Last of Us has been officially renewed for a third season. I'm so shocked.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I like, this is one of the headlines that I just mock because I'm like, why do I feel like that's already been like happened, or why that's already, that seed has been planted? Because I felt like coming off of the first season, a lot of the discussion was there's no way they can do the second game in one season.
Yeah.
And I feel like we were told they're going to stretch this across 4 seasons in total.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I remember that being it was going to be a 4-season thing, but I guess it was one of those things too. But they never officially like approved the third season,
right?
Even though,
right.
but at least we got it. It's the little thing that most series do this these days anyway with shows that that we know are going to be like that are clear hits, and so we got the word. And, yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's been shows. Why do I feel like there was a recent show that got renewed for 2 seasons, like right away?
Yeah.
Like,
Actually, the one we're going to talk about later tonight. Also, Spider-Man. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man got renewed before for seasons 2 and 3 before it even aired. So it does happen. And Star Trek has done that. Yeah, Star Trek: Strange New Worlds has done that also.
Yeah, and Daredevil got renewed for its second season before it premiered. Yeah. So why The Last of Us waited so long? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do they remember the numbers that they did during the first season? I think they should have picked up on this sooner. But
exactly. But hey, I'm looking forward to us starting talking about it next week. It's here. It's finally here this Sunday night.
It is. It will. Few more days, a few more hours. And then later in the summer, we will finally resume our Peacemaker discussion with its season 2 premiere on August 21st.
Yeah. HBO this weekend, I guess, did their second quarter sizzle reel, and it had a little teaser there with Peacemaker. So we got our first shots of season 2. So looking forward to that. And of course, I guess I want to say, and I might be making this up, or maybe I remember reading this somewhere some months back, but I want to say there was an element of the upcoming Superman movie that is going to have a role in the second season of Peacemaker. So that's why
that would make sense.
Yeah, and that's why they're releasing it.
Yeah. Didn't Soups kind of show up at the end of Peacemaker 1?
Yeah,
was the whole Justice League kind of?
It was the DCEU Justice League. Yeah, they all did. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm just gonna put this out here right now. If anybody spoils the opening credit sequence of Peacemaker season 2, plague on your house. Okay.
Yes, we riot.
That is the one thing that shall not be spoiled until you turn on that first episode. Okay. So I'm also talking to James Gunn here. You better not let a scene of that be leaked into any of these trailers or promotional stuff. No, because the anticipation for Peacemaker season 2 opening credit sequence. Come on.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, we cannot have that spoiled at all.
No. It was too classic the first time, and we know it's going to be something different, but man. All right. And that leads us to more rumors about Brad Pitt's production company Plan B Entertainment is currently talking with the creators of Adolescence about a possible second season. What are your thoughts on this, Will?
I really hope they do not do this. I mean, it was a limited series. It's a solid story. The the co-presidents of Plan B did share that when they were talking with the director Philip Martini, and also Stephen Graham also was the co-creator of the show. They were looking to do something. The quote from the co-president Gardner said that they were looking to widen the aperture, stay true to the DNA, and not be repetitive. Talking about season 1, but then she didn't reveal of course, she didn't reveal anything more about that. But honestly, this reminds me a lot of some of the discussions we had last year about like Shogun, because originally it was going to be a limited series. It was based on the one book, and because it was a critical and audience hit, the Hulu and FX decided to make a second season. But honestly, even if they were to make Adolescence like an anthology or something, to me, you hit a home run with this show. Don't mess with it. I like, I just really think they should just stick with what they have and not mess with a good thing. But Netflix will do what they're going to do. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm torn. A part of me agrees with you, and a part of me is like, no, they could totally do like there's so many things you could change. Like you could have it be focused on the female perspective and have like a girl do something. You could even change it to America, like the setting. You can or a different part of Europe. Like you could do things to change the environment and change the circumstance. I mean, the act too, what happens can totally be different. But they're going to have to really be crafty in trying to figure out how exactly do you make it an anthology without like rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
like we don't want, and we definitely don't want to continue the current story. Like that's ended. The purpose of that story has ended. I don't want them to resume that at all. I don't think that's needed. But I think that they could tell there are plenty of stories to tell in terms of like the overall umbrella of Adolescence as it currently stands in the world, and given the social media of it all and other things, and other cultural changes. So I can understand from a business perspective, of course, about why they would want to explore that. And I think that there are stories, but like this isn't something that needs to be like, and in 6 months we need to start production on season 2. Hell no.
No.
No, you're literally have to go back to the drawing board. But because I would love to more time spent like another story in this format and exploring these ideas and it being so raw. But they just have to figure out what that angle would be. So I if they can figure out the right story, then by all means, like do it. But don't just rinse and repeat. Like that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, your counterpoints to mine are definitely really salient, because there are even the manosphere and the toxic masculinity. There's things in the bullying that there's so many elements, and I do like the fact that you did say that could they tell this story from the victim's perspective, because
well,
that
not
was one of
even not even the victim's perspective. I'm saying females are mean. Females are violent too. Like, and
that's a good point. Yeah.
They get, like, there's this lovely movie called Mean Girls.
Yeah.
Okay. Just put that under Adolescence. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Regina
George. I mean, yeah.
I think that the thing about Adolescence as a show, they tapped into, they were able to find a way to take a child and put them in an adult world and talk about things where even there's moments when the child is like questioning the adults and saying, are we allowed to talk about this? But then again, that same child committed a very adult-like act. And also because of social media is exposed to porn and sex and all of this stuff. But no, the moment an adult talks to you about it, it's like, whoa, I'm a kid here. You can't be doing that. Like those taboo subjects, like they have to figure out a way to tell a story and get in, like, it doesn't even have to be a murder. There could be other crimes or heinous actions, of course. But I think I know that there are other stories to tell. Now, granted, if they do the switch up and tell it from a girl perspective, you got to have a girl creator and writer involved.
Yes. Agreed.
That's the other thing. And even race, like like if you switch up the race and go into that, like these two older white men, they can't be at the helm of that. And I think that's another barrier that they will have if they try to delve into those worlds.
All great points. But I mean, but this show is definitely has hit the zeitgeist. I mean, I think it's 4th all time now on Netflix, and as far as views, and so I think all the things you just shared, I mean, those are excellent points as far as like if they do decide to greenlight a second season and like you said, go explore things, race and gender. You're right. Or definitely we need to have the proper representation in the writer's room to make sure that it's an authentic story.
Yeah. And I have started The Pit on Max, and I honestly, it's weird. I don't know what episode I am at. I know I'm probably around episode 5 or 6, I think. I forget what time I ended it, but so in a future episode, I will share my overall thoughts once I finish the season.
That sounds I have been that's one of those ones I have been like I've been chewing on starting, so I may add that to the watch list.
Do you know a lot about it? Because I've had so many scenes spoiled for me. So
I do know the basic premise, but I haven't had anything. No spoilers.
No spoilers. Okay. I will forewarn you. I haven't gotten into this episode, and I honestly don't know when it occurs, but I do know there's an episode that features childbirth, and people are like, "Yeah, we did not need to see it. Did not need to see it." And I even warned my brother and sister-in-law who are expecting, and I'm like, if you ever do watch it, just be warned to skip an episode. That, like, the moment somebody comes in pregnant, just be like, no, we're skipping this episode. Okay, because it's a traumatic. That's what everyone has said watching that episode. Like, it's like, no. And a lot of medical experts have also said that, from what I understand, out of all of the episodes, that episode in particular is the least realistic because of some of the things that happen. Everything else they applaud and they're like, this is the most realistic. It's also, see, I don't know what episode I'm at because I watched it, but I also was doing other stuff during it.
Fair enough.
It's not an episode. It's not something where I'm like, oh, I have to watch everything, especially because a lot of the stuff I'm like, oh, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to see that. I'm not fast forwarding, but I'm also like zoning in and out.
Yeah, you're not dialed in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if I would recommend it or not. I'm still very much on the fence. But
yeah.
anyways, all right, that brings us up to Daredevil Born Again, episode 8, Isle of Joy. At his inaugural black and white ball, Mayor Fisk tightens his grip on New York City, parentheses, and Vanessa. So I have a problem with this episode.
Okay.
I do.
You tell, dude. All right.
I do. And the name is Dex. I think that's what ruined this episode for me, where I liked a lot of the stuff that was going on, but the prison break, I was like, oh, I don't like this. And then the fact that it took him so he broke out of prison so easily. It was scary. Yeah. It was just like, it wasn't scary. It was cringe. And then he just so happens to get on the bus to leave and just immediately knows where Fisk and Vanessa will be. And like, this is all seemingly happening like very close together timeline wise. That whole thing took me out of it. And I don't know, the show had me, and it hasn't lost me, but I will say I am not as on board as I was, like, say, episode 2 or 3.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, it's losing me.
Because I had the exact opposite feeling.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, this week it was, well, I think a couple of things. It definitely, I was locked in with this episode because I think it was the writing for me was just so, I guess it kept me guessing as far as like where things were going to go. And also I think tonally, this, I could definitely see this was the this was the version that after they came in and scrapped the original, well, I won't say scrapped, I guess retooled the original stuff. These two are fresh episodes, whereas episodes 2 through 7 are a mishmash of the original stories that they were planning on telling, and then the new creative team spikes it in there, reshoots and everything in it. But for me, this episode was a nice bookend. It was what a penultimate episode should do, which is set. We've had all these various threads throughout the season come to a head, and and for me, as someone who did not watch the original Netflix show, but am familiar with the storyline as far as with Matt's two biggest nemesis as far as Bullseye and Fisk. I felt sufficiently like paid off, especially given that also episode 1 was also done by the new creative team, and we get the follow up to the events that happened there with Foggy and tying everything back to who actually did order the hit on Foggy. So for me, all of those things really worked really well in this episode, and for once, whereas the other ones I liked, but I wasn't like locked in. Other than episode 5, as far as the intervening episodes, this one was one I was really like locked in and really enjoyed.
Sorry, I'm just blanking on where you want to go from there.
No, I was just giving overall thoughts. No, I mean, I
I
just,
know, I know
yeah.
that.
I mean, well,
I just
yeah.
don't
Well,
know.
let's just jump in. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we can just jump in chronologically as far as like what happened in the
Oh, we have to
episode.
break it down chronologically.
Well, if you want
Like,
to, or we can
this
go,
conversation.
or we can do story beats. I don't. I mean, it's totally. I am. You are totally in the driver's seat.
I hate when you do this to me. Um, like I had an idea of what I wanted to talk about, and then I
Go ahead.
lost it.
Oh,
But
okay. Yeah.
I lost it. Like
Oh,
that's the thing. Like
oh.
that's what's happening. Is like your overall thought took too long, and I lost where I was gonna go. And I'm just like I have no idea what to really say here. So
Well,
yeah, I'm glad you liked it. And I probably didn't like it. Um yeah, so the whole foggy of it all,
yeah.
here's my problem. Like, and you brought up threads coming together. Okay. Foggy's absence has been huge in this show, but his presence has been felt because of like Matt and the suit of it all.
Mhm.
I am not being articulate tonight, but we're just gonna go with it. And so my problem is it's not like we spent this entire season like, who ordered the hit on Foggy? Who
Mhm.
ordered the No, that question, we've never talked about that at all because the first the first scene of the first episode happens, Foggy
Mhm.
dies, and then it's a year later.
Yeah.
Like, and it feels like he's moved on. Well, like, but we know he hasn't.
Right.
But yet, at no point between then and now was he like questioning Cherry, or we never saw anything that they brought up in this episode between him and Cherry about like we did all that research and we tried to figure it out and we couldn't figure it out. And then they missed something and it just it felt weird to me that like all of a sudden this is becoming a thing and and how they get there because how it took them more than a year to get there, that's a little like I thought you
Yeah.
guys would be better at that because even I knew Fisk has been out of commission, Vanessa was in charge. So but it just felt weird to me that like we circled back around. I can understand why,
Mhm.
but it didn't feel to me like a thread coming together necessarily since it hadn't been a question. And maybe it's just execution because
Yeah.
when we talk about Spider-Man, arguably a similar thing happens, but I felt like like that was a good surprise and like revelation just because of how they executed it versus here where it just felt like, oh, now that we killed Muse, we need to resume this vendetta between him and Fisk and but also be like it really wasn't Fisk who called that shot, it was Vanessa. um Even though we have not been questioning that for purposes of this season at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say that. I mean, as far as the foggy of it all, I mean, yes, it has been a year, but I mean, but throughout that year, I mean, Matt has. I don't know. I won't say. We get the earlier in the season. We have the trial. Um, Karen shows up 1 year later. Um, we see moments. Yeah, I mean, was like I think there have been like moments of like this maybe quite things being dropped as far as like when I think, for example, when I think about the guy who when Matt was representing the guy who stole the candy, the pop candy from the bodega. I mean, there were questions about like, justice and,
That's not the same thing though.
Well, no, but there were elements throughout the season where Foggy's death did like show up. So it's not like it just came out of left field again, is my point. I mean, there have been like there have been like moments throughout the season where maybe not whether or not it was a hit that was ordered. I mean, that was the moment whenever they went, they were at the, Cherry and Josie, when they went back at the shop, when they started putting things together as far as what happened that night. But but there have been, but to say that it hasn't been there, not been a part of the story at all, I think is a bit much.
Yeah. What else do you want to talk about? I find it difficult because you already know my thoughts about this episode. So
yeah.
What do you want to highlight?
Well, I mean, okay. Well, let's highlight the night of the ball. I mean, I think that's really the pivotal moment. As far as, before we go there, I mean, since we were talking about Fisk and Vanessa and the hit and stuff, I mean, I guess they quickly dispense with Adam, just sort of as we see Matt and Wilson like both get back to their, I guess, truer natures, and all it, so we get that moment with Vanessa and Fisk and Adam where he's like, I gotta show you a secret, and they go down and he Vanessa like pops, kills off Adam, but just to sort of again drive things forward. But there was that, but I guess the other big highlight for me with the episode is, I guess, the ball itself, and just sort of, I mean, once as you started off talking about Bullseye and his escape, showing up there, and I guess just how, I mean, I guess the execution of just basically how things sort of went down with the dance and stuff, and the assassination attempt.
Yeah. So. Which, again, I mean, my point being is that they are deliberate to show you how many quote unquote task force members are armed and just walking around this ball, and how it's a very secure thing. Poindexter just walks in. Undetected. We spent 20 minutes in this ball, and it was very clear to me. You saw all of the wealthy people, and then you're watching task force members like with like guns. Sorry, I don't know the exact type of guns, but like they make it a point, and then Poindexter walks right in. It just, things like that will take me so out of an episode. I can't, it bothers me. Where you,
well, I mean, Dex was a former FBI agent, so yeah.
Like they made it so clear that Fisk, like, to the point where it was almost like, are you using these guys to even threaten the rich people? Which to an extent he was leveraging that now. But again, Poindexter just walks right in. So that took me out. And it was hard because I could see what they were doing with the relationships, whether it be Fisk and Vanessa, or Heather and Matt, which you planted a seed for me last week about the relationship with Heather and Matt, where this week I felt it even more, where I was just like, oh, okay, I'm starting to see what Will is, because like 1 minute they're saying I love you and getting their freak on, and the next minute she's complaining because he's out all the time, and I'm like, wasn't it like one night? Like I don't, and it just felt quick in terms of the not in terms of their relationship, in terms of the conflict that suddenly became, because she goes through this very traumatic experience with Muse / Daredevil. And then she, at the end of the previous episode, says, I think he said my name.
Yeah.
But then this episode, it's like, we're not going to address that. We're going to focus on the fact that she doesn't believe that Daredevil like saved her.
Yeah,
and Daredevil's just like, I'm just thinking in my head, I was like, can we explore that a bit more? Because I would like to understand the doctor's logic here before I get invested. So they're doing stuff with her character in particular that is starting to be very inconsistent and rushed.
Yeah, that was one thing too, as far as I guess with their scene before, with the ball and so to that, I was thinking about our conversation a little bit too about like he the strain in the relationship now, because Matt's getting closer and closer to being going back to he's back on the streets, being a vigilante again, and I guess to that point about you, I'm glad you brought up the Daredevil not saving her. And yeah, I mean, he did. Yeah, he facilitated, her being able to get that gun and popping off Muse. But I guess the bigger thing for me was just sort of her like, basically equating, I guess the whole thing about the mask and, what did she say? Oh gosh, I'm blanking on the exact terms, but I mean, she was basically like lumping Matt, all the vigilantes. She was basically siding with Fiska's vision of like why the vigilantes are a bad thing, and basically supporting Fiska's efforts with the task force and stuff. And Matt's like, well, fuck, I just like saved your ass, and this is how you treat us. And of course he can't like say that he's Daredevil at that moment, because then she will even treat him like even more crazy than she already thinks that vigilantes are. So it did try to create the I guess a tension, ratcheted it up more in that moment.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it was like manufactured tension. I guess it was dramatic tension, and just sort of like, okay, to really like I guess set things in motion for later in the episode, as far as like when we are at the ball. And I will say, when Matt was at the ball, and he made the cardinal sin that people do in relationships, is like, whenever he was like listening in on Fisk's conversation, I did laugh at that whenever whenever he was like, they were trying, but he finally, one, he got there late, and he tried to like play it off like, oh, I'm just trying to be old fashionedly late. And then two, like whenever they were dancing and she was like talking to him, and then he would like cock his head and trying to hear what's going on and stuff. And it's like, are you paying attention to me? And it's like, oh yes, I'm paying attention to you. I'm paying attention to you. I just thought that was just, I mean, those were the moments, I think, that when I said why I really enjoyed the episode, it was just those true like human moments that you don't always see in this genre from time to time, that I thought was what helped set this episode apart.
Yeah, I didn't interpret those that way, but to each their own.
Yeah.
They just felt like, to go back to the conversation you brought up initially between them and that dramatic tension, which did feel manufactured for me and just feel like come out of nowhere, because she was planning on writing a book about vigilantes, and I thought she was on their side. So maybe I misinterpreted that book storyline, but they didn't spend enough time making me understand her perspective, so it didn't feel like it came out of left field that suddenly she's anti-vigilantes. I think that was the flaw for me, among a few other things that I've already mentioned. But yeah, and then at the end of it, Poindexter he kind of gets his mark, but Matt jumps in the way, and it's Matt on the floor bleeding to quote unquote apparent death. And Fisk, he saves Fisk's life, which was teased at the beginning of the episode with the conversation between Matt and Dex in the police, in the jail, the prison, about, I'm trying to find it. You know, in another life, you might be defending me because that's what good men do. They defend their worst enemies, and he saved Fisk's life.
Yep. Well, I think with that, Yawn, I think it's time to move on to Starter Man.
I'm so glad you were engaged this episode, but like it just continued things that I found off-putting in the previous episode, and I was just like, this is losing me. It's losing me. And like also, I mean, everyone has seen the set photos from season 2.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all know. I mean, we know, even though he like jumped out there. I guess it's a theory spiral for the finale before we move on. I mean, we know. Yeah, I mean, we know he's not going to die. I mean, he's taking a bullet for, he took a bullet for this, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's really at this point, it's just like, okay, we've got the task force showing up, doing their thing, getting worse. We know Barenthal's going to show up again, so we figured the Punisher's going to show up in the finale to maybe take down the task force and stuff, and basically be, I guess Matt and maybe Poindexter will have one more showdown, and also the task force as well. So he's Matt's definitely going to be in a weaker state, so he's definitely makes sense for why Punisher's going to show up to help him out.
Yeah. Potentially all of that. I don't watch the previews. I have no idea.
No, this is not from a preview. This is just me. Yeah, no, this is just me talking.
Yeah. All right. That brings us to the last 3 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I'm going to go through the synopsis of each episode real quick. Episode 8, Tangled Web. Norman gives Spider-Man an ultimatum, causing Peter to do some soul searching. Episode 9, Hero or... Did I mistype? Menace?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Hero and Menace, right?
Yep.
Spider-Man swings into action as Lonnie looks to settle a score, and Norman visits an old friend. And episode 10, If This Be My Destiny, Peter's internship takes a dark turn with the arrival of an unexpected visitor. And so I'm just going to go to the point that I brought up earlier during the Daredevil discussion, and that the season finale, talk about a dark turn with the internship thing. So we realize that, or we find out as Norman reveals to the interns Project Monolith, which is a device that's a gateway to outer space.
Yeah.
Sorcerer Supreme shows up. I still had no idea. I was like, oh, okay, we're seeing him again. And then you see the Black Beast, and then you're like, oh, we're doing this again. And it wasn't until like the portal really does open and those two fall in that I figure out, oh, so you're telling me Norman, like the event, we just watched the events leading up to how he becomes Spider-Man.
Yep.
It was done so well.
Yeah. I was thinking, thinking like the Ouroboros, thinking back to like Loki season 2.
Right. And it's also just like Norman, who we find out, I think in the previous episode, has one of his scientists working on a special project to replicate Spider-Man's blood that he took from after the Scorpion battle that Peter lost. But that same blood and replication is inputted into a spider that then bites. So Norman basically created Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's done so well because it's just a great magic trick of like this event happens and you just take it for what it is at the beginning of the season, and at no point are you thinking like, oh, this is gonna tie back around. It's just not a thought. It's like that happened. We're not gonna play with time here, but and you're also developing this dynamic between Norman and Peter. Now, granted, anyone who knows Spider-Man knows Norman can never be fully trusted.
Right.
But you also like you understand why through these course of events, like he is so willing, especially because of that the nod to the Iron Man and Spider-Man relationship we know from the MCU that is paralleled at the very beginning of them meeting in that first episode. So it's just I really applaud them for such a good arc in that sense. I mean, these last 3 episodes really revved everything up, and then I think in the last episode they really had to be like, okay, Monolith, showing you what the game plan is, and now we're gonna leave all of these loose ends. but not really loose ends. Like they are untied, but they're also like, yeah, this is now where this character could go moving forward, as we see Nico with her medallion, and through the course of these episodes, Lonnie becomes something else. Or starting to.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that was the was that episode 8 or 9 where he gets exposed to the chemicals.
It's episode 8.
Yeah. So because he is Tombstone, but of course, whenever we see like the pink, the gray fingertips after he's exposed to the chemicals, which ultimately Tombstone does, his whole body, he looks like that, but we see the super strength and everything. And I did like the showdown with Peter and Tombstone whenever they were fighting the gang, and also how Tombstone becomes the leader of the gang, because the original gang leader, he chickens out whenever things gets rough, and so that so it's just to your point about threads and being woven and everything. As we talked about earlier in the episode tonight, we do know that we'll have seasons 2 and 3. So, we're seeing all the foundational things as far as this Spider-Man's rogues gallery being developed here when as I guess in year 1 of Peter having his powers.
And it's not having a villain for the sake of having a villain. I mean, with Lonnie, I mean, you already brought up the car, not the truck hijacking event. And really, it's not Spider-Man versus Lonnie at all in that. It turns into Spider-Man and Lonnie working together against Scorpion because he shows up. And in that moment, when Scorpion comes up, Dre is just like, or Dom is like, I'm out.
Yep.
He bails. and that causes Lonnie to be like, no, that I don't. They need someone else. I will say the one of my critiques about this show, it's not a big one, is I do feel like with Lonnie, it was a bit rushed for me, where he went from being like an athlete student and very much like on the straight and narrow to, yes, I understand he gave up, he took the place of his brother. I totally understand that. But then after that, the quickness came from the loyalty he had with the other members of the game. Like it felt a bit abrupt. And I felt very much like Pearl, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they saved you from the Scorpion gang, but yeah, I mean, but Portman Falls, you're right, but it was a very hastily descent into, like, fall from grace for him, for sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. One critique for me was just, I felt like I don't know if it was critique or just like, and maybe it's not a critique. It's just more like it was a beat that with Peter, all the adults just like throwing too much, like more. Not, maybe the adults not being helpful to Peter, because especially he as we see him try to balance being Spider-Man and being a teenager and working at the internship. I mean, poor Peter was like getting pulled in 1,000 different directions, so where it does cost a strain on his friendships, and it's strained on himself. I mean, when he just like has the moment there with May, and May's just like, you're stronger than you think you are, and then of course when he like goes to Norman, and Norman gives him, he does the with great power,
it's great respect.
Yep, exactly.
But I hear what you're saying, and I think you're right. I think that it almost, by having Peter engage with so many adults and them not really utilize May, he comes off so much older than a teenager in high school.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the disconnect there, where like, and especially when you bring in a character like Harry, who, yes, it's explained he has tutors and he doesn't go to high school and all this stuff. Again, though, you're kind of like, these characters between him, Nico, and Harry are supposed to be teenagers in high school, and even Lonnie, and yet they seem like they don't have those same pressures, and they seem like they're in college. They're just, the way they go about things, it's not matching. And I think why you bring, or you saw it now especially, is because, yes, that was a very good, nice scene between Peter and May, but I felt like that was the first scene we've had all season. And we really should have had more. Now, that was a great reveal at the end of the first episode about, and I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, oh, man, that really is a good reveal. So we find out at the end of the episode or at the end of the season, that May goes and visits Peter's dad in jail.
Yep.
And so I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was like, wait a second. So that's why when Nico and Harry were over, Peter brings up that all their moms are dead. Because my first thought, actually, I remember I clocked that. Yeah. And I was thinking about it at the time. I'm like, wow, but Peter, aren't you an orphan? Like,
yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah,
but no,
still here.
Yeah. The dad is still alive, and they kind of subconsciously planted that a few episodes ahead of time. So things were there. pick up on. But I thought that was really interesting, and good planning for that reveal at the end, which just again, which is something like, but all of the other decisions, like these, again, this, it's not a reboot, it's just a retelling. It's there's something so familiar about this show, and yet it is definitely telling its own version of events.
Exactly. Yeah, I know we talked about that, I think, last week, where it is, it's taking elements. I mean, even like we did get at the very end, and it was like a blink if you miss it. We get the Watcher from What If. Whenever he and Stephen Strange have their little send off goodbye there, and so I was like, it is reminding us that that we are still in the multiverse saga, and so we're just seeing another part of the multiverse here, and this is a multiverse story that actually works.
Right. Which, I mean, granted, the No Way Home was also a multiverse story that worked too. Again, Spider-Man knows how to tell the multiverse.
They do.
They do. Granted, they play in their own they play in their own sandbox too with the multiverse. I think that says something. But they and there's Into the Spider-Verse.
Eventually.
I don't know what it is about this property that allows it to be so adaptable to the multiverse, but yeah, I think it's just because of how many different versions and the story has been told, that there is something about it that they continue to find ways to reinvent, reimagine, and it doesn't feel stale.
Exactly.
Now, granted, Sony has released a trash load of projects that don't feature Spider-Man. But that's just because 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 automatically.
Exactly. But Sony, Sony has done a good job with Spidey in every iteration that they've had him.
And we even and I'm not familiar with this character, but we circle back to even Daredevil. He returns in this episode, and we see that another intern, Jean, is Finesse. And she has been spying on Norman, and it looks like next season she'll be spying on Harry too. So it like again, there are things that happened earlier in the season that, and I think also, because I don't remember the exact release order of these episodes, I know they were in batches very similar to how we have broken it up. And I think that's why a lot of the connective tissue feels stronger, because you're not going week to week. And the arcs feel much more complete, because like you are watching them in a full arc. And you like, yes, the previous arc ended with after Scorpion versus Spider-Man, and the first 2 episodes of the last 3 feature very much like Harry or Peter trying to deal with losing in battle, and regaining strength, and trying to figure out, well, like the doubting that occurs of that, and also kind of some PTSD. But he gets his stuff together, granted. But I mean, you brought it up before, the whole respect line. I was just like, they're going there. No, they're not. Thank God.
I was like, because as soon as Norman started going there, I was just like, oh, and then he was like, with respect, and I was just like, okay, no, did a twist on it, and it's completely, Norman read the room, you gotta, but it really, it goes to like, again, just showing the selfishness of Norman, and he's just using Peter as a means to an end. And so
Seriously.
So it was that, and then
like his conversation with Doc Ock.
Oh yeah, I was about to go there. Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to segue to, was his conversation with Doc Ock, and their history and rivalry and stuff. And I mean, it's just everything about Norman is just like, it's, as we know, we will eventually become the Goblin, and I like the way that they're, even from, and to your point about how earlier episodes planted the seed, we saw so by the time, we saw the selfishness of Norman, and where, and what angle is he, what's the angle here for why he has such a fascination with Peter after he sees him there in the stairwell, and we get that payoff, with him, like, with the spider, and of course, he does end up creating Spider-Man. So
right. Even though he was trying to create something for himself, like
for himself, though, exactly. It wasn't.
It's the ego of Norman that they did such a good job with, because he is very much like Tony. Very much, and he's a businessman. He's got all this money and power, and he just wants more. Well, then you start seeing like your rival become a superhero. Well, I don't have that. And I love that line in the final episode where when Doctor Strange arrives and he says, "You guys with your powers floating around like you're better than us." I mean, the conversation with Doc Ock even gets at that to a point. Like Norman can't have anyone appear to be superior to him.
Nope. Not at all.
And so, like, he's able to minimize anyone who's a threat in that regard. And yet he doesn't have superpowers. And so he feels inferior to anyone who does. And that is an angle, arguably, on Norman that has been there, but I feel like for the first time really fleshed out, at least for me. And it really feels like, okay, you're building a strong justification for a vendetta against Peter in particular. Which I think that this show would not work if the execution between this relationship between Norman and Peter was not done as well as it has been done.
Agreed.
It is the backbone of the show, which is arguably surprising because in the past there's been so much more focused on Harry and Peter, but which is sad, because I feel like by establishing such the relationship between Norman and Peter, like how that unravels allows there to be like just naturally that vendetta and that antagonism between Harry and Peter. Like it's just
because I think back, because one of the earlier episodes in this block that we watched, there whenever Harry, whenever Norman basically kicked Harry out of the room. He was wanting to have that conversation, and so so that's a great example. I'm glad you brought that up, because that made me think of that example of that, and again, planting the seed for why things go south between Harry and Peter, at least how they're going to do it in this iteration of Spider-Man, especially when you can think about like when it was Harry who got Peter the traditional well-known suit, because the suit that Norman they settled on got destroyed by the fight with the Scorpion, and then of course using the go get him tiger taking that from Mary J to to Harry. So yeah,
that went a bit far.
Yeah,
I was like, that's weird. That's weird.
That was weird. Yeah, I was like, that just doesn't. It doesn't feel right. Yeah, it's coming from him. Yeah.
So some things aren't meant for that. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Maybe if it were Nico, I would have been okay if it were Nico.
I
And
know.
it's not. Yeah. And
I
it's
know.
not. It has
Like,
nothing to do with. Yeah.
I know exactly with what you're gonna say because I feel the same way. I'm like, it's not because she's female. However, like we equate that line so much with Mary Jane that it's very hard not to like. It's very hard not to be like, whoa, talk about moving fast. Okay. But yeah, I'm very much glad that we watched this season. And also that again, when and this bodes well for the next Disney Plus show that we'll get into later this month with Andor season 2, given how they're structuring their episode release. You can do the 3 episodes, 2 episodes at a time. But if you're going to do it, like it should make sense with how they were written.
Yeah.
Like that's what this show proves to me above all else. I mean, I feel like earlier when we're talking Invincible, they do some combining of episodes released. Of course, there was the infamous Daredevil a few weeks ago that had episodes 5 and 6. But those felt like scheduling, not for purposes of the story they're trying to tell. Yeah. Like there's a reason why we're releasing them in this manner, because of the arcs and because of the overall story. And then I foresee that happening with Andor season 2 as well. But it's when it's because of scheduling that causes it to become a detriment as opposed to an attribute of a show.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Well, on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on all the socials at Will M Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me there too at SJ Belmont, SJBLMONT. Please follow our crew on X, formerly known as Twitter. And I said that backwards, but forgive me, in another life. Please follow us on Twitter, aka X. How did we used to say it?
Like X, formerly known as Twitter.
X, formerly known as Twitter. I had it right the first time. I'm so tired for some reason. Follow us there at Seen a Nerd, at Blue Sky, at Seen a Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at Seen_N_Nerd, and visit our website www.seenanerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.